A whole continent is quietly losing its economic firepower. Not in headlines, not in panic, not in fire or war, but in numbers, in jobs that don't come back, in talent that slowly walks away, in factories that shut their doors and don't reopen. Europe, once the heart of global trade, the spark behind revolutions in industry, science, and culture, is losing momentum. Why? Let's find out. Europe is still massive. The European Union and its neighbors form the second largest economy in the world, just after the US. Germany alone is now the third biggest economy, beating even Japan. Most European countries are wealthy, safe, and well organized. People enjoy clean cities, great schools, and stable jobs. But despite all this, something's off. Growth has slowed down. Over the past 20 years, Europe hasn't kept up. While the US exploded with startups and tech companies, Europe stalled. It's not that Europe is broken, maybe America is just speeding ahead. Still, the question remains, why isn't Europe growing faster? It has smart people, big cities, and strong industries. Everything seems in place, yet the numbers tell a different story. Each year, the gap between Europe and America gets bigger. So, what's really going on here? What's holding Europe back from becoming the global powerhouse it clearly has the potential to be? But now, many of the problems holding it back are not global forces beyond its control. They are internal, self-inflicted, and that reality is both terrifying and promising. Because what is self-inflicted can, in theory, be fixed. The question is, will it be? There is no single cause, just as there is no single solution. Instead, there are layers of interconnected problems feeding off one another. Some experts boil it down to 6 key areas: immigration, innovation, industry, integration, interpretation, and energy. And if you look closely, in each of these areas, Europe has been moving in the wrong direction. How about we start with immigration? For years, immigration has been framed as the necessary solution to economic slowdowns. More people entering the workforce means more growth. Simple enough. But in reality, it's anything but simple. Depending on the news outlet, mass migration is painted either a solution or a disaster. These opposing views don't just influence opinions, they shape government policy. In countries like Canada and Australia, immigration is tied closely to jobs and education. Migrants bring skills, money, and often a clear route to permanent residency. They help fill labor shortages and boost consumer demand. The US still attracts talent through student and work visas. But Europe tells a different story. Only a quarter of its immigration is work or education-based. Most of it comes from asylum seekers, humanitarian causes, or family reunifications. These categories are important, but they don't always align with economic needs. Meanwhile, Europe is losing its top talent. More than 2.5 million skilled workers have left for better opportunities in the US and now London, which is no longer in the EU. While people are coming in, many of the best are quietly leaving. And here's where it gets complicated. The labor force participation rate in Europe is now higher than in the US, a surprise to many, but this doesn't mean that people are working more. It just means that more people are technically in the labor market, including those actively searching for work. And that brings us to a brutal truth. The idea that Europe can grow its economy by simply getting people to work more hours or having more babies is not realistic. Birth rates are below replacement across the board. Immigration is not filling all the right gaps, and working more is neither popular nor politically viable. So, what's left? If you can't add more workers and the ones that you have aren't working longer, then you have 2 remaining tools. Give them better resources and give them better technology. Which brings us to energy. Energy use is one of the strongest indicators of economic development. Rich countries use a lot of it, powering factories, transportation, heating, cooling, and countless other activities that define modern life. But Europe has a major disadvantage. It doesn't produce much of its own. Norway and the UK, both outside the EU, controlled the last significant reserves in the North Sea. The Netherlands, once a strong natural gas producer, is pulling back, and the rest of the continent is stuck importing. For years, Russia filled that gap, but geopolitical events have made that source unreliable. And at the same time, Germany chose to shut down its nuclear power plants, removing one of the most stable sources of baseline energy just when it was needed the most. The push to renewables is commendable, and in time, it may pay off. But for now, Europe's energy transition is expensive, incomplete, and making it harder to compete. Heavy industries across Europe are being pushed to the edge by rising energy costs and increasingly burdensome regulations. Once considered the continent's industrial backbone, companies like Volkswagen have started to lose confidence under the pressure. This year, Volkswagen was forced to shut down several of its plants in Germany, a move that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. But the economic logic is hard to ignore. Production is steadily shifting away from Europe, not just to Asia, where labor costs are lower, but increasingly to the United States. Why? Because energy in the US is cheaper, regulation is often lighter, and operational efficiency is significantly easier to maintain. One of the clearest symbols of the shift is BMW. The company's largest plant is no longer in Germany, where the brand was born. It's in Spartanburg, South Carolina. This single fact says a lot about the changing nature of global manufacturing. American states like South Carolina can offer affordable energy, favorable tax incentives, and a workforce willing to adapt to new technologies. And so Germany's industrial prowess is slowly being exported, piece by piece. The factories are still producing German cars, with German engineering and precision, but now they're doing it thousands of miles away from Europe. This shift might boost profits in the short term, but what does it mean for Europe in the long run? As factories shut down, whole communities lose their footing. Young workers in places like Bavaria and Saxony must either leave or switch careers. Families tied to manufacturing feel more and more unsure about their future. And this isn't just Germany's issue. Across Europe, from northern Italy to the edge of Paris, the pattern repeats. High wages and energy costs make it harder to keep factories at home. Renewable energy isn't expanding fast enough to offset these costs, so industries move elsewhere. And if European goods aren't made in Europe anymore, what does that mean for the continent? It's not just about business, it's about identity, control, and survival in a world that is getting more competitive. And this is just one example. More and more companies are moving production abroad. It shows a much bigger shift in how global manufacturing works today. By moving production closer to big markets like the US and China, companies save on shipping, avoid trade rules, and reduce risk from supply chain disruptions. For businesses, it makes sense. It's cheaper and more efficient. But for European workers, it means lost jobs. When a factory goes to South Carolina instead of Bavaria, local talent gets left behind. European skills still powers the products, but the jobs now go elsewhere. While German companies can still count the revenues on their balance sheets, the human cost is a bit harder to quantify. What does it mean for a country when its best companies no longer see it as the best place to make things? This outsourcing of manufacturing power raises serious questions about Europe's long-term ability to maintain its industrial leadership, and whether its future is being quietly outsourced along with the jobs. Even worse, Europe is falling behind in one area that could pull it out of this mess: innovation. Europe has long been a beacon of invention, the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, home to breakthroughs in science, engineering, and design. But now, the continent lags behind. There are very few globally dominant European tech companies. One standout, ASML in the Netherlands, produces photolithography machines that power modern semiconductors. It might be the most important company in the world that no one has ever heard of. But beyond ASML, it's hard to find European firms driving the frontier of technology. Meanwhile, Silicon Valley continues to pump out billion-dollar companies supported by top-tier universities, venture capital, and an entire ecosystem built around speed and scale. In China, Shenzhen is doing the same thing. Europe, by contrast, is fractured. Regulations are strict. Markets are split across language and legal borders. Scaling is hard, and often, when European startups do succeed, their goal is to get acquired, usually by an American giant. Why has Europe fallen so behind in innovation? Well, some blame regulation. Others point to culture. Still, others say it's just history. After World War II, the US had a clean slate and a massive head start. The dollar became the world's reserve currency. English became the default language of global business. Europe rebuilt, but it never quite caught up. And now, it's losing its edge. Ironically, even with lower productivity, many Europeans enjoy better lives. Healthcare, education, and the cost of living are more manageable. Strip out America's top 10%, and Europeans often live less stressful lives. But how long can that last? If growth stays flat, there are more pressing concerns that could tip the balance. And once the slide begins, it's hard to stop. So what do you think? Are these countries really to blame for Europe's economic downfall? Or is there more to this story? Drop your thoughts in the comments, like and share this video, and if you're wondering on how a tiny nation can literally print wealth out of thin air and get away from it, then you need to see our last video on Singapore's mind-blowing strategy. And of course, don't forget to subscribe for more economic deep dives.